Okay, so next we've got a part 2, describe a language you want to learn that's not English. You should say what the language is, where you would learn it, and what you would learn it. I guess it's sort of like what in that language you would want to learn, maybe. Like, you know, I want to learn how to order in a restaurant, or I want to learn how to talk to my friends online, maybe. And then explain why you want to learn the language. Okay, so I think this is one of the more challenging topics to get in the IELTS exam, because obviously this isn't something people tend to think about a lot or to have to go into detail. Like if you ask me, I'd be like, what language do I want to learn? I'd be like, I don't know, like I guess I want to learn Chinese, you know, and then but I've not really thought too deeply about why I want to learn it. So if I got this topic in the exam, that would take me a little bit of time to think about or to make up or lie about a reason that I want to learn the language. So, where would I want to learn it? I guess like at home, online, like that would be convenient for me. So it's quite a challenging topic to talk about for 2 minutes. Let's see what this candidate has done.
If I need to learn a foreign language, it's not English. I want to learn Polish because I have Polish parents. Polish foster parents in Australia. We met at English school and they tried to teach me Polish because our communication wasn't that good because my English was really bad that time. So they tried to teach me some Polish, and I thought it is very nice to learn because we are like kind of family here, and it is really nice to learn. And I wanted to use the language with their parents because we was planning to go to Poland and stay there for holidays. So I thought it was nice to learn, and I still do. And I did search to study Polish in Australia. So I found out there is a Sydney University is doing language programs. They do teach lots of language, include Koreans and Polish. So I would go to there and learn Polish. Yeah, and from my parents as well. Yeah. And I think Polish and Poland, the language sounds very sexy. It's very charming, and it has very different sounds, like even the spellings are different, and yeah, so alphabets are different, and it sounds very sexy to me, so I just fancy it. I want to do it. I want to learn that language.
Okay. So that's quite an interesting language to pick, Polish. Like, it's a nice choice. I thought this candidate did quite a good job of explaining why they wanted to learn it. They had a good reason, that they had foster parents in Australia who are Polish. I agree with them. Polish I think, just gives me the impression of being a really difficult language to learn. But yeah, okay, so their answer was pretty good. They answered all the different points in the question. In terms of fluency, they did kind of have a lot of pauses. So I could tell that they were thinking about what they were saying, but to me it felt more like they were just trying to think of actually what they wanted to say and not like a translating pause. Sometimes you can tell as a teacher or an examiner when someone's pausing, whether they're thinking, like genuinely thinking what they're going to say next, or whether they're thinking about how they're going to translate something from Korean to English. So there is sometimes that kind of, difference in the pauses. And I think this candidate tended to be more on content. They weren't quite sure what else they could say about wanting to learn Polish. So I kind of think that's what they were pausing to do. Nevertheless, you will get deducted some points for pausing so much. In terms of pronunciation, candidate had reasonably quite good pronunciation. There was one where they said decided, but they kind of had a sort of sound in the motion, like just shided, which wasn't super clear. So again, it's the decided, and to get this sigh sound, it's a very hard S. So you need to put your tongue like right behind your teeth, put your teeth together, and you're making a really hard like air sound come out from between your teeth. Decided. Okay, so that's something that I would advise this candidate to practice, just to make that decided really quite clear. And there was also one or two times where their pronunciation of the word Polish didn't quite have that strong P sound at the front. Most of the time it was okay, but there was one or twice they kind of went Polish and it kind of got a little bit softer. But you really want that Polish, okay? That really strong po at the start. So going for that p, and then that O sound is coming from your chin, your jaw moving down and forwards. Polish, okay? So when you're saying it, get your bottom jaw to go down and then up again. Polish, okay? In a sort of a circular motion to get that O sound. Polish. So there was a couple of times the pronunciation of Polish wasn't super clear or wasn't super defined. But overall, reasonably good natural pronunciation. In terms of vocab, I liked how this candidate used quite a few natural phrases. They kind of used like a lot. They talked about they said, I just fancy it in terms of wanting to study Polish, which is like a nice phrase. When we in the UK, we use the word fancy in the same way we would use like I just fancy it, like I just like it, or I just want to do it. Like I might say, I'm going to go for a run this evening. I just fancy it, meaning like I just feel like I want to do it. So that was quite a nice phrase. I just said nice there, and I'm going to call this candidate out for saying nice too many times. Talking about how it's really nice to learn, or it's a nice language, or it would be really nice to learn it. My issue with that kind of is that this kind of use the word nice too much, and I would have liked to have seen them use a more high-level vocabulary word. Like it would be really awesome to learn it, or it would be really engaging to learn it, or it would be really fulfilling to learn it. I really want to stretch and challenge myself, and learning Polish would be so fulfilling to me because then I could communicate more with my host family in Poland, in Australia. So something like that. They used the word nice a couple of times, enough for me to pick it out, and I would advise them to work on including more high-level vocabulary. In terms of grammar, their grammar was quite good. My only issue with it was that most of it was stuck in the sort of past simple. Okay, past simple or present simple. They didn't, for me, use enough range of tenses in their answer to sort of show me what they were capable of. It was a lot of like, I met them in Australia. They tried to teach me English. I wasn't very good at it. I was studying in Australia. I thought I wanted to learn it. I thought I wanted to use it. Like, it was very much kind of like sort of simple grammar. There was a couple of times they said we were planning on going to Poland. The university is doing Polish classes, but I would have liked to have seen a greater range of tenses in this answer, especially in a part 2, because in the real exam you get a chance to practice and to prepare before you say it. So I always tell my students, like, this is your opportunity to sneak some like more difficult grammar in, because you have a chance to think about it, especially at the start of your answer. So that would be something I would advise to this candidate. So, you know, I thought overall grammar pretty good, vocabulary pretty good, pronunciation good, just a little bit sort of slow and pausing a lot, I think, is really what let this answer down. So let's take a look and see what they answer for the next part.
The reason why people study foreign languages is to communicate with others, right? Mostly. But if you're gonna stay in the same country as you're born, I don't think you need to learn it, because you are not gonna use it forever in your life. But it is very important that you know that other language to communicate with other countries' people, and from that you can learn other cultures. It's very nice experience to know, right? Yeah. And The study foreign language is important. If you want to live in other country, like a foreign country, you need to learn. And I think, so mostly people learn English, but I find very interesting. It is very interesting. Most of the people speak Chinese, right? There are so many Chinese out there. So they speak Chinese. The Chinese does need to learn other language because they are all everywhere. They're literally everywhere. So they don't need to learn, I think. But especially Koreans or Japanese, I think they need to learn because, we are very, population is small. It is not that small, but country is small and we have only one language and which is using in our country. So it is benefit to learn other languages, and if you can speak it fluently, I think it is very good chance to get jobs in other country. And it is very good. Yeah.
Okay, so in terms of fluency, again, some of the sort of same issues that we had in the previous question, but a little bit more. So we had a little bit more pausing. We had more pauses. We had more repetition of phrases and sentences and information. There was more pauses. There was more repetition. More of them repeating the same ideas over and over, sort of, they would maybe say the same idea once or twice before moving on, sort of showing that they're sort of thinking as they're going. So again, I think this candidate to me feels more like they're just unfamiliar with the topic and they're trying to come up with different things to say in terms of content. But it kind of, by the time it gets to the end of section 3, it is coming across as you're speaking quite slowly and influently. So that's really going to hold this candidate back in terms of their fluency score. In terms of pronunciation, this candidate does have quite good intonation. There was a thing about sort of where they said if you, and they kind of went up in their tone here. If you are not going to live in a different country, which was a nice pronunciation feature to see. It was a variation in pitch, and that sounded quite natural. Because it's kind of makes it sound like you're giving a real high, but if you are going to go live in another country, then I guess you need to learn a different language. That's a sort of natural kind of intonation to take. They used some nice pronunciation features in terms of, they said you don't need it because you're not gonna use it. So that was a nice feature that they used where they sort of elided, elision, they elided the word together because you're not going to use it. So that was quite a nice phrase. They also continued using some good fillers and good expressions. So they asked the word right. And they also had a nice pronunciation where they sort of went up on the word right. That was a good native sounding phrase to go in. Again, they had the thing with the nice experience, which they said quite a lot. But I think it's catching because I've caught myself even during this video using the word nice too much. And I think it's because I've been pointing it out. So somehow my brain is making me say it a lot. They saw a nice experience. They talk about it being quite interesting. Interesting. So if I was advising this candidate, I would say that they really can work on improving their adjectives. And in terms of vocabulary, I would really have them work on practicing better vocab in terms of adjectives to improve the quality of what they're saying. In terms of grammar, they had mostly consistent. Again, this idea that they sort of stayed sort of quite basic and quite simple grammar. They didn't really show me any sort of more impressive tenses or more impressive complex sentences. And there was one or two phrases they said the Chinese doesn't need to learn languages. Well, Chinese doesn't need to learn language. The Chinese is referring to all of Chinese people. So this should really be Chinese people don't need to learn a foreign language. Okay, because they live in a country where everyone speaks Chinese. This candidate also said they referred to other countries' people. In terms of this is why you want to learn a language, so you communicate with other countries' people, which should be people from other countries. Okay, should be the correct phrase, not other countries' people. So you can communicate more easily with people from other countries. Yeah, so there was a couple of grammar issues. So I think what I feel about this candidate is has obviously studied and lived abroad before. So they're quite confident in terms of their pronunciation, their fluency, and sort of communicating on a basic level. But what they've not shown me as an examiner is they've not shown me the real range of grammar and vocabulary that they can use. So even though they speak and they sound quite natural and they have sort of quite native-like features to their conversation, they're not actually showing me that they can use that more high-level grammar or they can use that more high-level vocab. So I can't give points for things that I've not seen. So in terms of fluency and coherence, I would mark them down at sort of like a 6 just because of the pauses, even though it was just because I think they were thinking of content, especially in part 2, that should be covered by the fact that, you know, you should have planned out a bit more what you were going to say. And by the time it sort of went on into part 3, the feeling was just that this candidate wasn't able to speak quite as fluently. In terms of grammatical range, the accuracy was very good. It was just in terms of their range that they were kind of let down. So I would kind of mark this in the sort of 6.5 kind of territory. In terms of vocabulary, they did use some nice native features, but I wanted to see, again, more range. So I would kind of put this in the sort of 6.0. And then in terms of pronunciation, I thought that was great. I would sort of bump that up as like a 7, basically. So I think overall, this candidate's coming out at a 6.5 for their speaking. I could see an argument if somebody wanted to argue with me that it should actually just be a 6 because they didn't show me enough vocabulary. I could sort of have that debate with them, but I think overall, it was pretty good in terms of the fact that they used phrases like right, they said literally everywhere, they had like fancy it, so they did use some like less common vocabulary. So, you know, I think overall, I think a 6.5 would be fair for this candidate.